Bearded Man here.
The first part to the atheist dilemma. Misunderstanding the difference between mere claims and provocative arguments. A claim is concise, declarative, and non-provocative in nature. An argument is explanatory, elaborate, and provocative in nature. If I simply say, I believe in God, that's not an argument, nor was it intended to be an argument. And if you choose to refute the simple phrase, I believe in God, then you are the one initiating a debate, and the burden of proof falls on you.
Alright, so ginormous straw man of the atheists just don't get this. Let's just set that aside. Let's also set aside the special knowledge that it would take to say that all atheists at all times have this problem. Both of these things are really intellectually dishonest, and it really starts your video on a very bad foot to make it appear this way. The big issue I have is with the half-truth that you then present, which is that a belief statement or a non-belief statement is not something for debate. That's true. If I say I believe in leprechauns, okay, so what? That's nice. Who cares? But it is not true that if somebody asks me to show that leprechauns are true, that suddenly magically shifts the burden of proof to that person, because that's not how the burden of proof works, nor is that how questions work. Otherwise, every time anybody asks a question about anything, they would then have the burden to, what, prove that that's the case? If they're like, hey teacher, why is the sun closer to Earth in winter? Why is that the case? I don't understand that. It seems it would be the other way around. And the teacher will be like, well, can you prove that that's true? Blah, the burden's on you now. Like, I don't know. I'm asking you a question. Well, you have to prove it now. Come on. That's not how it works. And if somebody were to say in a casual conversation, prove it, they don't mean prove that you believe that there's a God, because of course that's not a thing you can prove. If you think that's really what they mean, then you can just say, no, I can't prove that I believe in God or don't believe in God or whatever. I can't prove my beliefs at all, or non-beliefs. Nobody can. It's not a thing unless we had technology and blah blah blah. So no. But that's not what they're saying. Probably what they're saying is, can you prove that there's a God? And that doesn't shift the burden to them, because that's not how it works. Okay, so no, you're wrong about that last bit. Next.
But if I say, God is real, and I believe this because it has been proven to me, this statement is more of an argument. I am stating in the general sense that God is real, as opposed to simply saying, I believe in God, which is more personal. So when I say to you that God is real, and I follow up by explaining that this apparent fact has actually been proven to me, then this can initiate a debate, and indeed from then on the burden of proof would be on me. It is then, and only then, that I must explain the reasoning for my belief.
If I say I believe in goblins, ogres, and dragons, I don't really have to prove that to anyone. I don't have to prove that goblins, orcs, and dragons really exist, but people might wonder why the bleep I believe that, and if they ask me, why do you believe that, then I should have some sort of answer to that. If they ask me, can I prove it, then I should be able and or willing to try to prove it, or just admit, no, I can't prove it, it's just my private belief, or my own belief, and I just believe it because it feels good to believe in. I just like believing in G-O-N-D. You know, goblins, ogres, and dragons. I have no proof of it. Just like to believe in it. But does that really get me off the hook? Yeah, in a way it does, yeah. But it doesn't put the burden of proof on them because they asked me to prove that. That's not a thing, just to remind you in case you forgot.
I cannot expect you to believe as I do, unless I explain how I arrived at my beliefs. But even then, you still have the choice to deny the same evidence and reasoning which brought me to theism.
Well, here's the thing. If your reasoning is for the existence of God that a book says it's true, that's not very good reasoning, is it? It's not that I'm just denying that. It's that that reasoning doesn't work for anything, period. It's not good enough. And more to the point, it's not the same sort of reasoning you would use on anything else. If it's a special category where it's like, well, yes, for everything else, I'm going to need evidence. But when it comes to this, one book is just all I need. That's weird and odd, and it's going to cause skepticism, and rightly so. It should make us skeptical because you're not using the same system consistently. Well, why is this? Okay, here's one book that says that your God's fake. So, by your own standard, then there isn't a God, or there is, and then there isn't a God because this book was written after your book, or this book was written before your book, or whatever. What's the new standard going to be for supporting that belief? So your reasoning, whatever it is or isn't, has to come under question. Why would you think it wouldn't come under question? Of course it does. It would be silly that your reasoning wouldn't be subject to further questioning about how it works, if it does work, and if it's only used for one thing but not for everything else.
The problem is that everyone requires different degrees of reasoning and persuasion before they accept an idea. If I tell 3 different people that I won a brand new Ferrari, the first person might demand that I show them the Ferrari, and only then will they believe me. The second person might demand that I actually use my keys, open the door, and drive the Ferrari, and only then will they believe me. But then the third person may demand to see documentation that proves that the car is in my name, and that I didn't just rent it to impress them.
I know, it's so hard when people want evidence for your claims, and when you don't have any to offer them, that's gotta be a really difficult position to be in. It's just really hard. Why can't they just believe you? Right? Let's stay with your little analogy here and just change the Ferrari for God. Hey guys, I believe in God. That's nice. Okay, yeah. I mean, there is a God. Oh, okay, that's different. Do you have proof of that? Well, yes, I do, actually. I have proof. I'm going to show you the proof here in just a moment. Oh, that's great. Show me the proof. I want to see God. Bam! Here you go. Here's God. Oh, my word. There you go. Proof of God. Finally, I have it. That's pretty good. Hey, can you test God? That would be cool, too. Like, how can we test God? Hey, I would like some more information about God as well. We're just going to pretend like the text says all that. And here's where your analogy falls completely apart, because you don't have any visual evidence to present us of God, unlike the Ferrari. And there is no test like asking you to drive God around, which I guess would be weird, but okay. There's no test that would show that God's there, and asking for even more evidence after that is pointless because you didn't even have any evidence to give us in the first place. So, oh no, they all want different levels of evidence is irrelevant. They all want evidence. And unlike the new Ferrari that you won in some contest, which you could prove that you entered the contest, you could prove that you have the Ferrari, you could prove that you own the Ferrari, you could drive the Ferrari, you could show the paperwork. You don't have any of that for God. It's just not there. It's not available. So your analogy epically, tremendously fails on every single possible level that it can fail if we switch out Ferrari for God, because it's more like you said, I won an invisible Ferrari that cannot be detected by any means at all, and this book just says that I won it, and people that said that I won it totally believe in this book that I have. Well, that's wonderful. None of that's proof of your invisible Ferrari, which we don't believe in, because first and foremost, nobody has shown that an invisible Ferrari is a thing in the first place, and secondly, because you have absolutely no proof to show us, and that book doesn't count even close to proof. Well, but I have this lengthy argument for it. That's not proof. That's not what we asked for. And, by the way, your argument also has logical fallacies in it, so that's kind of a problem, too.
To some people out there, all they need to do in order to believe in God is simply read the Bible.
Yes, and the same can be said for every religion and cult and weird idea that's out there. People can believe in something just from hearing about it, not even necessarily reading about it, but just because. People can believe in all sorts of things that doesn't make the belief true. And it isn't a good thing, by the way, to just have a collection of written accounts and to start believing based on that. That isn't a good enough standard for anything else. So why should it be a good enough standard for this? The problem with all holy texts is that they contain mythology. They contain ideas that we have never seen to be true in our current era. That is, miracles. We have never observed a miracle, and even if we did, we would not be able to define it as a miracle. That's a whole separate issue in and of itself. But yeah, there's problems with that. And then they contain history that isn't really true many of the times, or is inaccurate history, or is based on hearsay and rumor and mythology and other things around the same time. You have these creation myths from all over the world, and it is not good that somebody can just read that and start believing based on that, because it's true of every single religion, every single cult, every single belief out there. In fact, you don't even have to read something. You just hear something and start believing it. There's this guy who gets paid, I don't even know how much, to go stand in front of people, and all he does is look at them, and they're all crying, getting emotional, and it's like, he's not doing anything. He's just standing there staring at them, and they're gonna... He's like, oh yeah, it's his power. No, he's just looking at... How can you buy into this? But they bought into it for whatever silly reason, and they believe in it. Even, it's a placebo effect. Yeah, it works because they want it to work. And if you tried to test it, the effects would just disappear. But the fact that people can just believe isn't a favor in your point. It's actually a favor against you. Because, yeah, that's true. People make up ideas and then believe in those ideas that they just made up all the time. And somebody else can make up an idea and other people will be suckered into it. That's not a good thing. That's not critical thinking. Why is it good enough for your Bible but not for anything else? Would you want to, and this is a great example, would you want to go to a doctor that had spent zero time at all in any school of anything ever, never studied the body, never did anything, and was going to give you open heart surgery? Would you want that doctor? And if that doctor just said, well, I just really believe that I can do this work. No, of course not. Or if he said, well, I just read this one book, Grey's Anatomy, I'll be fine. No, it wouldn't be enough. It's not good enough.
That's it. From then on, they believe in God and they want to learn more about Him. But for most others, especially in our overly cynical Western culture of the modern age, where being skeptical is considered cool,
this outright lie, ring, ring, no, not answering the phone right now. This outright lie pisses me off. No, we don't live in a society that celebrates skepticism. Oh my word, I wish upon all wishes that we did live in that sort of world. If we did, we wouldn't have climate deniers. We wouldn't have people say that the earth is flat. We wouldn't have any of that garbage. We'd have less racism, less problems, higher education, higher standards, but we don't. We're like number 2 away from being on the bottom of the list. And I think the bottom one is some third world country on the acceptance of biological evolution, just for one thing in science that we're all getting wrong. And then we're somewhere really low down on acceptance of climate change, of global warming. Why? Because people aren't skeptics. People aren't critically minded. They are fine with just faith and fluffy ideas and feelings. And we're seeing more and more of that rise up with postmodernism that's saying your feelings are more valid than the facts. And if we had, oh my word, if we had a society that celebrated skepticism and held it up as a high standard, my word, we would not have the president or the Congress or even the system that we have now. That would all be different. That would look nothing like what we have now. The education system would completely be changed. We'd be sending people off into space all the time. Science would be the highest amount of money that we spent things on, not the war machine. My word, we're number one in the amount of things that we have that can destroy the world like 10 times over, and then some. Why? I don't know. It's not a skeptical thing. It's not something that makes sense, but there we are. I wish we had a civilization that held skepticism to the high standard that you make fun of here. This pisses me off because what's the opposite? Because what you're saying is it's bad to be a skeptic. That means it's good to have faith. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to bother with the rest of your crappy video because that's what it is. It's crap. All it is faith. As long as you have faith and I have facts, you will always be wrong, and I will always be right. And you could take your faith and shove it because it's irrelevant. You don't have evidence for your claims. If you did, you would present it, and the argument would be over. There wouldn't be an argument, but you don't. All you have is arguments. You showed at the end. You have arguments that have been used over and over again. We've heard them. They've been demolished multiple times. That's it. It's stale. It's static. It's boring. It's dead. And you have the audacity to lie about the sort of society that we have and say it's one that holds up skepticism as a good thing. No, that's not the society that we live in. I wish it was, because it would be better than what we have now. As long as you have faith and I have facts, you will always be wrong, and I will always be right. We don't have any empirical evidence. We don't have any tests. And we certainly don't have a logically coherent argument. You didn't offer us any of those things. And unless and until you do, we're going to remain skeptical of your conclusions. Hey, if you like what I did, or even if you don't, I need money to exist. So be like Hector Svenny, Joseph Schmidt, Robert W. Lester, and Jacob Santos, and be a Patreon so I can say your name at the end of videos.